Hello, I'm Flint McLaughlin. I'm the Managing Director of MEC Labs. A lot of people ask about our methodology, what we've learned these many years that we established the research institution, and how we approach solving a particular problem as it relates to conversion or something of that nature. I want to take just a few short minutes to try to help you understand this approach. My staff's asked me to walk into the studio. I have no script, I have some slides, and I just want to talk to you and help you kind of see the way we think as we try to unpack a particular problem and solve it. To start with, I'd like to make a couple of observations for you. The first one is this: the funnel is a useful analogy, but it's often misunderstood, and because of that misunderstanding, there's sort of a flaw that keeps us from using its full potential for helping us achieve a result. The first flaw is this: we think of it as a useful analogy, but not as the primary analogy. All marketing should influence a decision. If it doesn't, it's a waste. And the funnel is a remarkable way to start thinking about that process through which a decision is made. The problem is, the way most of us think about the funnel confuses us and keeps us from being able to get the highest and best yield in our marketing communications. The first reason is this: gravity is not working for you. Gravity is working against you. And for the funnel to make any sense at all, we need to invert it. Because people are not falling into your funnel, people are falling out of your funnel. Look, we've conducted 10,000 plus path tests and experiments trying to understand this process that people move through in their mind before they say yes, or the ultimate sort of macro yes that means you have a close or you have a sale. And as we've thought about that, we've realized that you must actually overcome resistance. And the gravity in the illustration of the funnel almost represents those organic forces in the marketplace: competitive noise and distractions and all those other factors that keep people from moving all the way through to the final conclusion. So that's a second problem with the funnel. And there's a third: people aren't moving up the center of your funnel or falling down the center. They're moving up the sides. There are paths, multiple paths. And each of those paths are essential to understand and even to map if you're going to achieve a maximum yield. I can tell you that at the peak of the funnel, based on our research, we would place what we would call a macro yes. And the macro yes is more or less the equivalent of a close or a sale. Now, that's pretty self-explanatory. We realize that. But what we don't understand is that it is the sum of a whole series of micro yeses, and each of those micro yeses are essential if you're going to achieve a macro yes. In fact, one single no can keep someone from reaching the full conclusion of this process. It stops all the progress. You can't afford a single no. And too often, we distort this in our understanding and try to optimize, you might say, the move from a email to a landing page, when in fact there are a whole series of micro yeses that must be achieved in the email or in the paid search ad, somewhere in the channel, and then on the landing page. And if you're in lead generation, even after the lead is captured and people are doing inside sales or field sales, there's still a series of yeses that must be won. In the end, marketers collect yeses. These micro yeses add up to the macro yes. And if you're going to squeeze the best performance out of any process, what you've got to do is to take each one of those junctures, each one of those decision points, and win a yes. Now, I'm going to move on, but it's important for you to understand that a yes might be as simple as moving from the headline to the opening paragraph, from the opening paragraph to a set of bullet points, from the bullet points to the call to action, from the call to action to a piece of information entered in a form field, all the way through to a confirmation. You need to understand all of those. And often when we think about designing a website, we don't think about the structure of the site, we think about the structure of the thought sequence. And in fact, until you've mapped the micro yeses in the mind of someone, you can't really appreciate, or you can't really design the ultimate technology solution or a set of visual cues in a landing page that you need in order to achieve that sort of ultimate, that sort of macro yes, and to get the highest possible conversion rate through the whole process. Let's think about it just in a bit more depth. If you try to visualize that, you can take this analogy of the funnel and you can really strengthen it by adding another analogy, and that's the analogy of a fulcrum. You can see on the slide behind me that we're showing one of those micro yeses, and in a sense, this is saying there's leakage. There's a performance problem here. If your company, I'm just making this number up, was generating $100 million a year and you're leaking at this point X percentage, that means you're losing that much money until you plug that leak. And fixing this process is not a matter of seizing opportunity, it's a matter of stopping the bleeding. Most of us have great leakage. In fact, virtually every site we look at is leaking in its funnel. But you can't see the leak if you look at a web page, because people don't buy from web pages. People don't buy from companies. People buy from people. So you've got to look into the mind. You don't optimize a web page, you optimize a thought sequence. And if you look in the thought sequence, there's going to be some point where you're asking for a step, you're asking for a yes. There has to be a progressive movement. And somehow at that point, when you start to see performance degradation, it shows up in your metrics. It's because the perceived cost is outweighing the perceived value. It's a fulcrum, and the negative side of the fulcrum weighs too much. What do marketers do? We simply do this. We tilt that fulcrum. Now, it's important that we tilt it at every single micro yes. And to do that, we need some sort of methodology, and you'll see underneath that fulcrum a little bit of what looks like a math equation. C equals 4m plus 3v plus 2i minus f minus 2a. It's easy for me to say because it took 15 years of my life to figure out how to say it. It's years and years of research. It's drawn from all these experiments. We have at MEC Labs the world's largest library of case studies and experiments in the field. Drawing from that, we've learned to develop a simple, repeatable methodology. There are multiple heuristics like this. In fact, it's this combination of analogy and heuristics that gives us the power to see deeper into the process, which is really seeing deeper into the mind, so that we can affect a maximum yield. Now, what you're doing as you're adjusting the fulcrum, as you're adjusting the perceived value, and I'm going to take the slide and go backwards. So you're moving from this negative to this positive. That process does more than fix a place, a juncture, a decision point. But it should, in every case, produce for you a learning. Because in the end, the goal here is not to get a lift, the goal is to get a learning. In fact, the goal of every test should be to get a learning, not just a lift. A lift might get you a conversion increase, which satisfies your boss and makes you feel like you're doing well. But a 20% lift is only good when that's the best you can do. But what if there's a 60% lift there and you're leaking 40% even after you've tested a landing page and felt satisfied? Adequacy is the enemy of excellence. And so the marketer has to use every pass through a testing process, every adjustment to the micro yes, as a means of discovering something more about the customer. What you'll see is the process is cyclic, and as you move through it, your customer theory becomes more robust. Now, what's the value of a customer theory? We get so lost generating customer data. Most of it we can't even use. We have warehouses, many of us, with loads of information that we don't know how to apply. I'd like to simplify that by telling you, based on our research, the only thing I need to know about a customer is enough information to predict their behavior. Now, I'm keenly interested on information that will help me predict their behavior, because I can translate that into a yes. When I take the right offer, present it to the right customer, I can win a macro yes, which is a sale. But I will do that not with one solid knockout punch, you might say, but by thinking about every step in this mental sequence and optimizing it. As I'm doing that, I'm growing in my understanding of the customer. And I'll tell you something else I'm doing. I'm building sustainable competitive advantage. And that occurs as you get a fuller understanding of the customer. Driving all that are heuristics like this one, you might see. When you look at that particular heuristic, you're actually seeing the way we break down the cognitive psychology of the purchase process. At MEC Labs, we have a whole battery of these heuristics, and we use them to isolate what's going on in an email or a landing page, but not the page itself. It's in the mind of the person reading the email. It's in the mind of the person interacting with the landing page. And by applying those sort of repeatable methodologies, we're able to drive a dramatic result. All over the world, we're seeing conversion lifts and increases by applying these critical heuristics that help us see and think more deeply. You can learn these heuristics. Even when we're performing, you might say, a set of services, because MECLABS is more MIT than McKinsey. We're not really a consulting group. We do have a services unit, and they can consult. But we're really about research and experimentation, and we're an institution. So even if we're performing a service inside of your group, we want to teach you everything we're doing, share with you everything we're learning, and give you the capacity to take some of the things you're seeing here and use them to drive a result. Now, I know that I'm just presenting theory. I know that you're seeing something that might appear to be abstract, but you have to remember that all over the world, we're driving up results and yields using this sort of thinking that you've just been, hearing me try to share with you. In fact, I think there is another video you can see that will show you examples of this meta-theory in action, case studies and experiments. And that might be the next best place for you to turn to if you want to understand more. Thank you very much.